Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Our first coincidence miracle today is something that I personally noticed a few days ago. Many of you know I have been reading the diary of Saint Faustina, a nun during the 1930s, 1940s, from Poland. Saint Faustina, she's been canonized as saint now, and her diary is really packed full with many miracles happening to her every day. But what I noticed was she started a lot of her entries in her diary with the letters JMJ, and many of you old-timers like myself know what JMJ stands for. It stands for Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and so it's a brief prayer. When I was in school being taught by nuns in the 1950s, the nuns would tell us to start out our work right on our papers at the top left corner, JMJ, as a little prayer before we started our work and before we did our homework. But I found out that St. Faustina, back in 1935, 1938, she was using this in her diary, so it was kind of a nostalgic moment for me. So I share it with you because if you want a neat way to pray, sort of a mantra prayer, whenever you start work where you're writing something, up in the top left corner, if you write the letters, capital letters, J for Jesus, M for Mary, J for Joseph, you're really just asking them to bless you on the project you're working on. It's a great way to take a final exam, by the way. Some of you out there are taking final exams. It asks for Jesus, Mary, and Joseph to inspire you while you're taking your exam. Some of you might be interested in the fact that the diary of St. Faustina covers many things, most especially that St. Faustina the nun was inspired by God to create the feast day, the holy day called Divine Mercy Sunday, which is the Sunday that follows the week after Easter Sunday every year. We have a thing called Divine Mercy Sunday where everyone goes through a process of asking God for mercy on that particular day, 1 week after Easter Sunday. And John Paul the Great, John Paul II, the Pope before St. Francis, And John Paul the Great passed away in the year 2005, April 2nd, 2005. Actually passed away on the eve of Divine Mercy Sunday, which is pretty amazing, especially considering the fact that when John Paul the Great, John Paul II, before he was a priest in Poland, he worked in a factory, and on the way home every day from the factory, or I don't know if it was every day, but often anyway, John Paul the Great, he was not a priest yet, and on the way home from the factory, he would stop in the same church where St. Faustina had her visions, and had a lot of visions of Jesus appearing to her in a church in Poland. So some of you who might be interested in John Paul the Great might be fascinated with that story. And the reason I posted it today is because after I noticed in her diary that she used the letters JMJ, the very next day I had gone to attend Mass the next morning, and I parked in back of a car, and I saw this very small bumper sticker, and I couldn't make it out without getting out of the car, but I parked the car to go into Mass, and as I got out of the car, I went to look at the bumper sticker, and unbelievable, this was the next day after I read St. Faustina's diary and noticed that she was using JMJ. This bumper sticker on someone's car was advertising JMJ. It was a small bumper sticker, and it said JMJ, and it said it's a small prayer to say Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. So that's pretty unique, and it's, this show is about coincidence miracles, and that was certainly a couple of coincidences, I think. First, that John Paul the Great, before he was a priest, used to visit the same church as St. Faustina in Poland. On the way home from work, he would stop in for prayer. And I noticed in the diary the night before that St. Faustina was using JMJ, and the next morning I go to Mass and I park in back of a car with a bumper sticker, JMJ. So you see all these little, they're like breadcrumbs in the forest. You follow the breadcrumbs and it takes you to your destination. And so I'm just doing all this today, sharing it all because I'm trying to help people out there who are not noticing coincidence miracles, that if you look at the small, tiny things happening in your life every day, you'll notice that these small, tiny things add up to significant coincidence miracles, sometimes in a few hours and sometimes in a couple of days. Our next coincidence miracle actually follows suit, kind of matches what we just talked about, St. Faustina and John Paul the Great. This story is about a man who tells us that he's developed a good habit of, before he gets out of bed in the morning, he says his rosary, and he says the Divine Mercy prayer, which was created by St. Faustina by inspirations that Jesus had given her over a period of time. Jesus explained to St. Faustina how he wanted the Divine Mercy prayer said. It's a very simple prayer. It doesn't take very long to say. And so this man was sharing a story with us that he had this wonderful habit now of, after the alarm goes off in the morning, he stays in bed and says the Rosary, and he says the Divine Mercy Chaplet. And he relates that in his case it takes about 35 minutes to do that, but he gets these magnificent prayers. They bring great blessings. You can Google them, Rosary and Divine Mercy Chaplet. If you Google those, you get a wealth of information. And what he related to us was on a particular day, he had an important meeting to get to in the morning, and he was up late the night before, so he set his alarm to get up in time, but he didn't set the alarm for enough time to say the Rosary and the Chaplet on the next day, and he figured he would, say those prayers later on in the day because he had to get off to this important meeting right away the next morning. And he relates to us that he woke up the next morning before the alarm went off, and he woke up wide awake, totally refreshed, wasn't tired, and couldn't go back to sleep. And so he was inspired, say the Rosary and the Divine Mercy Chaplet in bed before you get up, because you're wide awake and you feel refreshed, and so there's no reason not to. And he says, as soon as he finished, absolutely to the second, he finished the Rosary and Divine Mercy Chaplet prayers, the alarm went off, which is a superlative coincidence miracle, because it means that God had awakened him in time to say the two prayers he always said, and the fact that the alarm went off at the precise second when he was done shows that God had planned the time almost to the second, or not almost, but exactly to the second. By the way, as you know, we don't push religions toward anyone. We don't tell you to do religions or practice certain religions, but to talk to God and ask God what to do and notice your miracles. Ask God for inspirations. This show is about sharing miracles and trying to push people to become a friend of God and talk to God all day long. But you might be interested in Googling Divine Mercy prayers and Googling the Rosary, because those prayers have been said for a long time by many people, and they have promises attached to them, heavenly promises made by Jesus appearing to people and the Blessed Virgin appearing to people. So it's something you might want to do on a rainy day. Google the Rosary and Google Divine Mercy Chaplet for some information. Our next coincidence miracle is something that also happened to me. I had just recently received a new supply of books. I replenished the inventory because I was sold out. And I had them in the car, and I had to run a couple of errands. And as I was running a couple of errands, I was close by one of the stores in the area that I supply books to, and I hadn't visited for a while, and the owner is a good friend of mine. So I was in the area, so I thought I would stop by and say hello and just chat. Wasn't even thinking about delivering books because he calls when he needs them. So it was just to stop in and say hello. So I went by, and I was so blessed because as I approached the store, I saw that he had a display in the window, and he had both of my books in the window, the blue book and the red book, book 1 and book 2, and it was on display, and it was on sale. So I was really impressed and glad that I, just coincidentally stopped by. I actually got inspired to stop by. And so I went inside. We had a wonderful discussion and chat. And as I was leaving, he said, "Oh, Tony, by the way, the only books I have left is what's in the window. So, if you have a supply, I'd like to get some more books." And I said, this is a tremendous coincidence miracle because I just got some books this morning, and I happen to have them in the car. I didn't come here to give you the books. So that was indeed a coincidence miracle, very splendid for me, and especially to see the book was advertised in the window, and he was telling me how successful that advertisement was because our covers on our books, the front covers, tell a lot about what's inside each book, so it's a great window display item. Our next coincidence miracle is about a man who reports to us that he was working on a roof and he had fallen off the roof, damaged his back very severely. The doctors told him that there was very, very little hope that he would ever walk again. He was going to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. His family, all of his family, began to pray for him, and miraculously he's been walking around fine for several years now. And so that he relates to us the power of prayer. Don't ever discount or minimize the power of prayer, because in his life he knows the doctors said he would never walk, both doctors, and here he was walking just fine and enjoying that, and he has really no incidence of pain. So prayer does work, and it calls for faith, and if you believe and you ask, you will receive. God bless you all, and I'll talk to you next week.